Next slide, please. All right, so just a few housekeeping rules. I'm sure we know how these go when it's meetings and webinars and all of that. So let's just, try to create a safe and respectful space. Let's be muted unless we're asked to speak. And if you have good internet connection, please go ahead and turn on your camera. And this meeting, I'm sure you've been told, is already going to be recorded because we had a lot of people wanting to join but could not join due to various reasons. And if, as the speakers are presenting, you would like to interact, please go ahead and use the chat box. Next slide, please. So a quick rundown on the agenda today. You already heard from Dr. Divi, who is the country coordinator as well for SEEA. Now, it's a very broad program, so we have a lot of people on the team. I am part of the team. My name is Edima Balulua. We also have Michael Doran. He was on the first launch talk, probably will be joining us too on the third launch talk. We'll also be hearing from Dr. Emma Verling shortly, who is a research fellow, and she will be talking about the critical intersection of biodiversity, ecosystem restoration, and climate change solutions. Then our very own ambassador, Rhiannon Laubach, will be talking about community-led actions for countering biodiversity loss. And finally, but not the least, we have Dr. Breffní Lennon, who is a research fellow, UCC as well. We'll be sharing, or should I say emphasizing, the nuanced aspects of human engagement with energy and climate initiative. Then the floor will be open for questions and answers. Next slide, please. All right, so this is where I have to hands off and leave you in the safe hands of Dr. Divi Blix. She's going to be telling you all about the EU Climate Pact. I know you're probably wondering, what is this project about? Yes, we know we're talking about biodiversity and ecosystem restoration as a theme, but what is EU Climate Pact about? Over to you, Dr. Divi.
Okay, thank you so much, Edima. So what is the Climate Pact? That's a good question, actually. Well, first question is what the EU is doing. During all this election, you hear a lot of the EU do nothing as something, but actually EU do something. So the EU have the EU climate law, where it's by 2030, we need to actually to cut at least 55% of the emission. And we also need to, in the EU budget itself, including in the local authority budget or national budget, we need to put at least 30% of the expenditure related budget for the climate related project. So this is actually a mandatory for all the member states to put the budget under 30% under the EU climate law. And by 2050, we mandatory to achieve the climate neutral EU. So what is actually happening here? How actually EU develop this, how they can monitoring this, they have they call it EU mission over here. The EU mission charter here is to support at least 150 European region and local authority. So all our locality, region, government must be signing this by 2030 over here. But currently we only have 150, so they're trying to working on this. And they build the community of practice on the adaptation of the climate change, which is actually here to support the European Green Deal and to achieve the climate adaptation strategy. Next slide, please. So this is how the EU Climate Pact Initiative born. The EU want to have some climate initiative, which is actually reaching the root community. It's not only the government, but also the citizen over here. How the citizen can contribute over here. So the climate pact here is the pact as a movement of people united by shared mission to build more sustainable Europe and help the EU to become climate neutral by 2050. So when you see that I'm nothing, I cannot, I'm only one person. Yes, this is maybe saying by 100 million people in Europe. So you see that how much that you can change Europe by contributing this kind of initiative. So the climate pact here is an opportunity for us to learn about climate change. This can be anything that today talking about biodiversity and ecosystem. You even have some very interesting topic like how is climate change related with biodiversity? Is it bird now disappear because of the climate change? Is it something that you see the shark is gone now in the sea or something like that? Or maybe Dr. Breffní saying like what is the human effect of this climate change? This is happening, and then how we actually develop, implement this solution. We have many research, we have many publications, but how we implement it in our citizen, in our community. And the most important is how we connect each other, how you see that you are not alone to do this. So this actually, we can maximize the impact of the solution. So if you're interested here, we have this how to discover the park, which is you can see for each country. And you also can register yourself as ambassador, like what Rhiannon did is actually, she's the ambassador of the climate park. And then we can do some action plan together. So this is part of the action plan, how we take action together. So we are not only like sit down and reading publication or something, or we painting, or we throw the soup in the Mona Lisa painting. That's not really actually what the climate pact doing. But what we're doing, well, we have a photo competition. If you have something nice, Edima can share also there. Actually, that's part of this. And next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, so what is country coordinator over here? So the Southeast Energy Agency is a country coordinator. Each country, we have one coordinator. So we not only have coordinator, one country coordinator, we have also PR agency who actually will boost your activity, will put in the newsletter, will put in radio, what is you do for the climate action. So this part of the agency is working on this. As the country coordinator, we in the role is actually to enable connection between the climate park in the Belgium and in our ambassador, which is our ambassador here is actually connect directly with the community, the citizen. They bring all the initiative here, and we bring to the EU and reporting CD. This is what Ireland doing there, and then what actually here actually we already build the existing resources over here, and we trying, for example, like we have some activity tidy town or something like that, that we actually trying to engage with the citizen over here. Okay, I think this is the last of my presentation, not mistake. Yeah, I give it to Edima.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Doctor. All right, so we're moving quickly to our next speaker, Ambassador Rhiannon Laubach. She is a development officer with Ballyhora Development, and she works on the Greener Spaces, Places, and People team. The team provides information, guidance, support, and resources to help both communities and individuals to find out more about the actions that they can take to tackle the challenges of climate change and biodiversity loss. Welcome, Doctor. Oh, well, I said doctor. Welcome, Ambassador Rhiannon. So today she's going to be talking about this topic. We're saying stop, look, listen, preserving biodiversity in Ballyhora country. Actually, county. I want to believe that should be county. All right. So over to you, Rhiannon.
Thanks, Edima, and thank you very much for the invitation to speak here today. And it is actually Preserve It Ballyhora Country.
Oh, country. Okay. Okay.
So this is an experiment we're involved in that has been funded through the Shed Green Deal, and it has a focus on bringing together people to discuss the issue of biodiversity loss, and more importantly, also identify what the solutions are on a local level. And we would have had 4 partners for this project across Europe, in Slovenia, Stockholm, and Athens. And we would have met twice in the year to discuss the commonalities between our different projects. And what we would have done is a methodology called study circles, where which are participant-led. So it's not about someone coming in and dictating what the participants are going to learn about biodiversity. It's about finding out what the participants want to learn and going from there. If you could go to the next slide, please. And you can see here, we're in, if you're not familiar with Ballyhora, we're in East Limerick, North Cork. We deliver over 30 regional and national programs, and we work in 3 key areas: community development, economic development, and where I work in mostly is environmental development. If you could move on to the next slide, please. So we would have started this project in June last year. We'd have started with a big public event. We had Éanna Ní Lamhna come down to speak about climate change, about her experience of biodiversity and climate change. And as part of this project, we were encouraged to engage with people who might not usually engage with biodiversity programs and people who had been socially isolated due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So from that, we had a target of recruiting 10 to 12, but in the beginning we started with 20, as what often happens in a lot of long-term projects. People will drop out along the way. If you could move on to the next slide, please. And you can see here the different activities that we were involved in. We started in June 2023, and we were met together to discuss what we wanted to learn and how we were going to do that. And what was very interesting was the participants all identified a strong need to learn more about biodiversity in farming, to really discover what actually is happening there and not just what's captured in the social media and in the newspapers. And they also, interestingly, wanted to learn a little bit more about how does biodiversity link to our heritage, our culture, and even how it can be linked to traditional skills. So we would have started off, our first study circle would have been a nature walk in Doon in northeast Limerick. And from that, we were able to have those lighter discussions about climate change, that we weren't just sitting in a room saying, oh God, climate change is terrible, it's the end of the world. And often that kind of discussion can turn people off, but we were able to focus it in a lighter way and have that discussion as we were walking along. Then now we're moving on to study circle 3. We would have studied bats and moths in, I don't know if anyone's familiar with Croomtown Park. Last August, we were able to get up very close and personal and see these bats and moths, which most people had never seen before. And I mean, there's so many myths about them, that bats are going to get stuck in your hair and moths are going to eat your jumpers. So people were able to see behind those and really see and understand that part of biodiversity. Then we would have moved on. We would have had a talk from the Pride EIP, which was very enjoyable. And then we moved on and we visited an apple farm. And we had a lot, people were very interested in that. As one of the big things that stood out was that every single apple is picked by hand, which is something I didn't know. So it's a very labor-intensive industry, and we're able to see on the ground what the farmer had done to improve biodiversity. Next slide, please. Then we moved on and we focused about how do you tell the story of biodiversity in your community. And what we did was we had a photography class walking out down by the River Shannon in the beautiful Castle Connell, and people learned how to tell a story of biodiversity using their phones. And then moving on, we went into an area that I didn't have a lot of experience with. It was understanding that link between heritage and biodiversity, you know, place names, the Irish language. And then we moved on again and we did a workshop on creativity and biodiversity, and we all designed some pottery mugs using biodiversity as inspiration. And then we moved on to our last study circle event was making hanging baskets through twig and twine hanging baskets. But through this, we were able to learn about coppicing and sustainable woodlands. If you could move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. And then our final event, we wanted to really have that celebration of everything that had been achieved by everyone. We would have had a photography competition. We launched our short film that we'd made with the participants about biodiversity in their communities and what it means to them. And then we would have also had Sean Ronan, who from Irish Wildlife Sounds, who I'm sure everyone's familiar with, and he would have spoke about his journey to discover more about the Irish birds. If you could move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the challenges we came up against was we had an enormous we have a big geographic spread, so it was difficult to get participants to those areas. With timing of events was always challenging because that's always not going to suit everyone. And also when people have caring responsibilities, people having to change what they're doing at the last minute, accessibility to make sure all these study circles were accessible to everyone who wanted to attend, relevant, that we were able to include relevant activities that interest people, and then the commitment to, I mean, it's challenging for everyone to give up that amount of time over a year, and we're very grateful to have participants who did. And also getting to grips with the new methodology for us of the study circle methodology. If you want to move on to the next slide, please. And for opportunities that we identified is that biodiversity brings people together. It doesn't matter what community they're coming from. The shared love of biodiversity really builds that relationship in a group of people, and the importance of having those non-formal learning activities, moving away from the classroom and just getting out there, enjoying biodiversity and having those discussions. And the people will all put a different value on biodiversity, but to truly engage with them, you need to know why they have that value and where they're coming from. And the last one is just the amount of knowledge that people have of biodiversity in their own communities is huge, and it's a fabulous resource for us all. Next slide, please. I think that's me finished. Thank you very much. And I'm just going to pop a link for the short film we made into the chat if anyone's interested in seeing it.
Thank you very, very much, Rhiannon Laubach, Ambassador Rhiannon Laubach, for that wonderful presentation. Actually, when she was talking, I was just smiling and telling myself, oh my goodness, I don't want to get jealous of this community and all the activities and all the things that they have done. It's simply amazing. All right, we'll quickly move on to our next speaker, Dr. Emma Verling, who is a graduate of UCC and is a research fellow at the MaREI Center, University College Cork. Now, she has a background in marine ecology, marine policy, and spent much of her career working in research and policy setting in the US and the UK. And currently, Dr. Emma is the coordinator of the MaREI Sabres project, which aims to improve the uptake of ecosystem-based management and strengthen interventions and measures for the protection and conservation of coastal and marine areas. She also co-leads the Irish demonstration area for the AA Agora project, which she's going to talk to us about in just a couple of minutes. And this is focused on the development of cross-sectoral cooperation for restoration of marine and coastal ecosystems and increased climate resilience. The floor is now yours, Dr. Emma.
Hi, thank you very much, Adima, and thank you, everyone. I'm really grateful for the invitation to come and talk to you all today. And when I got this topic, I thought, oh, the Agora project is perfect to talk about all this. And some of the stuff that Rhiannon was talking about also really will resonate through this. So this is obviously, I'm presenting this today myself, but I have other colleagues who work with me, my colleague Melanie and colleagues at Cork County Council, and this is a collaborative project. So it's part of this European project called AA Agora. So this is a very large project, it's 3.5 years long. So we're looking to reduce pressures in coastal areas through ecosystem-based management and nature-based solutions. And if you click on there, I have a few clicks within the slide, which is annoying. So you go on to the next. The Agora project is really about supporting decision-making related to marine ecosystems. We're looking to mobilize and engage communities and local actors. And really it's about delivering solutions, innovative solutions around nature restoration and biodiversity to help with this climate crisis that we're all in. So as I said, it's a large consortium with different stakeholders from lots of different sectors, but it's important to say they're clustered around these 3 demonstration areas, and County Cork in Ireland is one of those. The others are, as you can see there, Norway and the central region of Portugal. So we've got, as I've said, mixed stakeholders, and we're looking for transformative innovations. So we're trying to identify transformative innovations which we can then share with others with the hope of, the word they use is upscale, but it means spreading them out, replicating them, so we can do more of this type of work for climate resilience, societal engagement, ecosystem-based management, and sustainable blue economy, of course. So this is County Cork. There's a little bit there about County Cork, which has a very large coastline. It's the biggest county in Ireland, which anyone from Cork will tell you. And it's got a very strategic port. But our sites of interest are actually to the east and west of the city. We've got Harper's Island wetlands, and we have sites called Pilmore and Youghal to the east and Inchydoney to the west. So the challenges that we have, this infographic on the right, really, you can see it at the end. I'll show you the whole thing, but the bottom part of it is about the situation we're in now. So we have a lot of challenges. We have coastal management infrastructure in place, but it's not maintained. There are a lot of emergency solutions used to tackle problems like flooding and storms, and this has led to drastic coastal change. So the concerns we have in our area really are damaged sand dunes, beach erosion, damaged wetlands, biodiversity loss, which is what we're talking about a lot here today, coastal flooding. And what we're trying to do within this project is get a better understanding of long-term coastal processes for sustainable management. And that's where biodiversity comes in. It's a long game. It's not going to solve your problem tomorrow morning, but if you look after it over time, it will solve your problem, and it'll be very cheap as well. So we're trying to support wetland restoration, increase biodiversity, and use scientific knowledge to support decision making. So what I'm going to talk about today is our work in Harper's Island first, which is to the east of Cork there. So what is it? Well, I'd encourage you all to look at this website. It's a low-lying island in the northern section of Cork Harbour, and it's a very important refuge for high numbers of large numbers of water birds. And it's a wonderful nature reserve which has grown up over the last 20 years as a result of a collaboration between Cork County Council, the local community, and the NGO Birdwatch Ireland and other local groups. So it's a great example. It's a fantastic example of bottom-up nature protection, biodiversity restoration. And there's loads on that website, and if you ever are in the area, I would encourage you to visit. But what were we trying to do? Well, this is a little map of it here, and this shows what it is. It's mainly wetlands, and I said there that it's a collaboration. They do a lot of work there. So what they're doing is they've just actually put out some horses today. They have livestock grazing, so these are like nature-based solutions. This keeps the vegetation down and allows space for water birds in the winter. They've developed pollinators areas, they have nature trails, they have education materials, information boards, which are bilingual, Irish and English. They've built bird hides. It's really amazing what they've done there. And it's a great example, as I said, of bottom-up restoration. So what are we trying to do in the Agora project? Well, I'd like to say that the project done by the Harper's Island people I didn't do anything there. What we're trying to do is to map their journey. So we're trying to support them in their work, capture their achievements, figure out what their challenges are, so that other people can do the same. So we've spent the last little while as part of the Agora project, we did one-to-one interviews with them, walking interviews, workshops, to try and understand, how did you get here? It took 20 years. We don't have 20 years. Other people need to get there quicker. So we're trying to we're trying to produce this document, which we've just finished and will hopefully be releasing soon, which maps their journey, shows some of their challenges, which were similar to some of the ones that Rhiannon mentioned in her talk. But I would agree 100% with Rhiannon that biodiversity brings people together. So really one of the main things that came out of this, and the reason that it worked so well, was there was a mixed skill set, there was enthusiasm, there was dedication, all these reasons why this worked. And I don't have time to get into that today, but that's what this little reflective learning brief is. But the Agora project is also helping them with their citizen science, so we're helping to fund some of their work. So they've built these little sand martin nesting areas, which are fully occupied at the moment, and they have a great Facebook page. You can see they have a live webcam and everything in there. We can see what's happening. So they're helping to fund this work and facilitate more work and really support this amazing work that they've done. The second part of the Agora project is really different, and it's dealing with challenges at the coast. It's also related to nature-based solutions, biodiversity. And what we're talking about here is, I mentioned earlier, the damaged dunes, the beach erosion, all the problems that come with increased storms and other climate impacts. So what we've done here really is, again, we're engaging with communities and stakeholders, mainly in Youghal. We're trying to figure, because Youghal, I should say, is an area where there's a large beach, if you're not familiar with it. And like many areas like that, erosion is a concern going forward. So we're using lots of different tools to try and understand what are the challenges. So it's not us deciding what the challenges are, it's talking to other people so we get a full picture of what the challenges are. We use a thing called MapShanair. It's like a survey platform which with a mapping element that gathers people's opinions. We use this fuzzy cognitive mapping approach. We're creating online mini games, lots of different innovative ways to try and engage with people to try and understand how to solve some of these problems. We're also doing some scientific work around monitoring. So to better understand long-term coastal changes, you have to do some scientific work, because ultimately scientific knowledge will help decision making later. When it comes to decisions, when there are challenges with flooding and erosion, we need science to know what's the best thing to do, so we can move away from this emergency reaction whenever something happens. So we're doing GPS surveys of some of our beaches. So Pillmore near Youghal is one of those. And there's also another project going on that's using drone imagery, and that's looking at core coastline vulnerability. And this is Youghal here. We want to use in Youghal as well, we want to use this tool called CoastSnap, which some of you may have heard of. It's basically a little stand that you can put your mobile phone in to take a picture, submit it to us, and over time you can build up those images and see how is this coast changing. And this obviously creates a huge bank of data, but it also engages people. It makes them think about erosion. It makes them look at the sea and go, oh, I can participate in this. So it's a great educational tool. In Pillmore, we're doing these DGPS surveys, which looks at changes in the level of the beach over time. When you do repeated surveys, we can see what is actually changing. How are the sediments? How is the height of the beach changing? These things are all really important to understand what solutions might work for us. You can see there in the bottom right, this is a rock armour solution, which is often cited as a solution, but it actually comes with a lot of other problems. And finally, we want to put a monitoring camera, a more robust monitoring camera, perhaps in Inchydoney. We're in the process of trying to do this, which would actually monitor the hydrodynamics, what's going on at sea, how is this impacting what's going on the coast. So that's all about data collection to better inform scientific decision making. And ultimately, it's all about, could we use nature-based solutions? Can we try and use biodiversity? There are a lot. I could have a whole other talk on nature-based solutions, but nature does a lot for us. And in the case of sand dunes, it protects us from flooding and storm events. If we don't look after the dunes and look after the communities that live on them, the grasses that hold the whole thing together, we're in trouble. So this is ultimately the aim of what we're working at. And I'll finish with this slide, which is the whole infographic for our project. The bottom part is, as I said, where we are now. The line there says collaboration, citizen science and communities. That's what we're trying to do to get to the top part. And the top part is our envisaged future. This is where we'd like to be, using nature-based solutions, having monitoring, having restored wetlands, restored dunes, better, healthier biodiversity to help sustain us. Because it's very, very important, and it's not just for looking at. So thank you all very much. I think that was very quick and a lot of information, but obviously please let me know if anyone wants any more information. I think I put my email on the last slide. Please just get in touch, and we're happy to talk to anyone about this work and collaborate. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much as well, Dr. Emma Verling. And for those of us that are just joining as well, just to let you know that we will share these presentations, the entire slides, so you would get this, no need to worry about it. Thank you. All right, so our next speaker is Dr. Breffní Lennon. He is a senior postdoctoral researcher at the Cleaner Production Promotion Unit in the UCC School of Engineering at University College Cork. Now, he is a human geographer researching the social and economic dimensions to the energy transition, in particular, renewable energy, along with wider sustainability issues concerning long-term community engagement. Next slide, please. So today he will be emphasizing the nuanced aspect of human engagement with energy and climate initiative. You're welcome, Dr. Breffní.
Thank you, Dima. Welcome everyone, and thank you very much for inviting us to speak today. I have a tough act to follow with the previous speaker, so hopefully I don't put anyone to sleep. So next slide, please. Just to introduce my focus, the research focus I kind of primarily aim towards is around the theme of society, sustainability and energy, and sub-themes involve energy citizenship, energy poverty, community engagement, energy justice, and renewable energy. And as a geographer, my background is in geography, so I'm very much interested in the human-environment relationships and the intersections there that are that arise from that. So most of the research that I do is very much informed with an environmental lens as well. And you can see some of the examples of recent publications, including peer-reviewed journals and book chapters. And the QR code, you can follow, there is a number of QR codes in the presentation, but you can use the QR codes to see my research profile. And if there's anything there that you want to discuss further with me or collaborate on, please feel free to engage with me there. So next slide, please. I'm going to start, well, hopefully I won't bring the mood down too much. I want to kind of start off with a question. So how many people are expected to die prematurely due to the impacts of climate change? Unfortunately, while it is a depressing question to ask, it is increasingly going to be these type of questions that we will be asking in the coming years as the climate crisis deepens. So it's research has already started on this. So next slide, please. For example, Zhao et al. And Bressler both have looked at this, and at present there are some 5 million premature deaths attributed to abnormal hot and cold temperatures. And as some of my previous speakers mentioned as well, in terms of climate change, it's not so much that the world is getting hotter, which it is globally, but individual areas will get colder as well as hotter. So, and the climate change, what is happening is that it is magnifying the extreme temperature changes. So it's our ability to cope with abnormally hot or abnormally cold temperatures. So I think if we look out the window ourselves, it is unseasonably cold for this time of year in Ireland. So, and while India unfortunately is facing extreme heat at the moment. So these are issues that we're all facing, and by the end of the century the mortality cost of carbon is estimated to be about 83 million people. So when we think of the amount of the loss that involves, you know, the one of those 83 million people may you know, contribute to inventing a new a cure for a new disease, for current diseases or emerging diseases, for example. All of these things are, you know, they're incalculable losses that we're facing. And Bressler estimates that for every 4,400 tons of CO2 that we add beyond the 2020 rate of emissions, so we're not even talking about 1990, just the 2020, when we had a slight dip in emissions due to the COVID pandemic, we will contribute to the premature death of at least one person for every 4,000 tons. And this brings in, sorry, just to sort of one final point on that is this brings in the issue of climate justice and energy justice, where primarily those who can say, for example, if we think about a long haul flight from Tokyo to London, that's roughly about 4 tons, 4 tons of CO2. So those of us who can afford to have a carbon intensive lifestyles are going to directly contribute to the deaths of those who can't afford it, because invariably the majority of climate deaths will be in the global south rather than the global north. Next slide, please. So we all know that, and as the IPCC repeatedly tells us over the last number of decades, systemic change is needed to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Emissions must already be decreasing and cut in half by 2030. So if anyone is following the emissions rates, we've already surpassed the 1.5 degrees Celsius at different stages in the past year. So we're not going in the right direction, unfortunately. And we do need a systemic shift to renewable energy, for example. But we also need to make our built environment more energy efficient. And in order to do these things, we need to have greater nature-based solutions. So, for example, more carbon sinks like forests, and arrest biodiversity loss, and actually kind of re-look at improving the biodiversity in our both locally and internationally. We have a rapidly closing window of opportunity here as well. So it's to unfortunately again say not to put too much of a dampener on the mood, but we're facing a significant crisis here. So next slide, please. So it's unequivocal that that the global warming is caused by humans. Unfortunately, due to the pushback from vested interests, that still in 2024, we're still having to say that humans are causing this. But we do have choices here, and there are different paths we can take. So if we substantially cut emissions and focus on nature-based solutions, we can actually improve our own overall quality of life as well. And that's the positive story to tell, that these emission cuts aren't about causing, damaging people's lifestyles, but it's about improving people's lifestyles. So how do we do that? And it's not to rely on old, inefficient technologies like fossil fuels, but to focus on new technologies that will actually try and help as well. Next slide, please. So the current, for some reason the headings are missing from the slides, but just to say that the current energy system, we just to think about how did we get here. The current energy system was built during a period of rapid European colonial expansion. And when we think of all the many injustices that kind of went with that, energy was one of those, and those injustices are baked into the current energy system. So it's not just good enough that we change our switch from fossil fuels to renewables, but we also have to look at how we organize ourselves, and we apply a justice lens to the new systems that we create as well, so that we don't leave people behind. But at the moment, those the colonial period still very much impacts our worldview, and the type of worldview that we're allowed view, not just by the media ecosystems and everything else we have. I would point to two recent books, or relatively recent books, that I think are very useful for expanding our understanding of the world as well. For example, Graeber and Wengrow's The Dawn of Everything, and Roxanne Dunbar-Ortiz's An Indigenous People's History of the United States. So both of those books are illuminating in terms of how taking a kind of a non-European perspective of the way human societies have developed. For example, Roxanne Dunbar-Ortiz in this book talks about, for anyone familiar with the Disney film Pocahontas, the real historical people that story is based on. John Smith was able to ride his horse through forests in North America, pretty much at ease. And if anyone knows anything about rewilding, a rewilded forest, you're not going to ride a horse through anything like that. So these forests and everything else, while seen as wilderness to European settlers, were actually managed environments that actually promoted biodiversity, not limited it. So we have what is called a shifting baseline syndrome, and taken from a European perspective, we very much, we have a very limited view of the world around us, and I think we need to bring Indigenous peoples' knowledges back into the discussions here a lot more. Next slide, please. So the global impacts of biodiversity loss and climate change are interlinked, but as MaREI et al. Say, the feedbacks between them are rarely assessed, and they're only that work is only starting now. And nature-based solutions can be used to partner with decarbonisation efforts to combat the climate crisis, and they must be. It's if we are to kind of meet this challenge correctly and effectively, they must be partnered together. But it must not distract us from phasing out fossil fuels and decarbonising our world. Unfortunately, again, there's a shift and an emphasis on kind of masking the idea of greenwashing and all of these. That it has to be done in conjunction with the decarbonising of our energy systems, not just as a kind of as a separate thing. Next slide, please. So nature-based solutions across different landscapes and hazards. I think if you click again, hopefully you get, oh no, it's there's a sorry, if you could return to the previous slide. Unfortunately, the slide is missing, but what's the image is missing from that. But if you can follow the QR code again, it'll show you the one of the it's a publication there where it looks at different areas as well. So nature-based solutions aren't a one-size-fits-all. We need to be very mindful of the different climates and microclimates and landscapes that are involved. So applying, for example, nature-based solutions designed for grasslands will not work in forestry. So it's just to be mindful of that as well, and to be kind of careful. Next slide, please. So some of the recent publications we have, just a bit of shameless self-promotion. Say for ourselves, we've recently published a book titled Living with Energy Poverty, Perspectives from the Global North and South. And we very much, it's looking at the lived experience of energy poor households across different contexts. So it's, and again, linked into the climate crisis and by extension, biodiversity crisis. This book explores some of those issues as well, and sort of that, issues faced in the global north I also translate in the global south and vice versa. Next slide, please. Another recent publication is the Sustaining Energetic Communities, and it's looking again there at citizen energy communities across Europe and the formations of these and how they are kind of currently taking place. So if you're interested in energy communities in a European context, it maybe suggests kind of checking out that article as well. And I think next slide, please. The final thing is that we have a book coming out, myself and 3 colleagues, called Participation in the Energy Transition and the Role of Citizenship in Actioning Effective Change. So this book explores common understandings of citizenship, and the way we define citizenship is intimately linked to the kind of society and political community we want, which has a very significant consequence for the environment as well. So thinking back to the books that we highlighted in the presentation, the way we view citizenship impacts the way we view the world. Okay, I think that is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Breffní. Yes, I do agree with you. We do need a systemic shift, but not just a systemic shift. I think we also need a mind shift, because it takes 1 or 2 people to come together to say, oh, we want to take this climate action. But we're going to talk more about this. Now, before I go on to question and answer, in case anyone has questions they would like to ask, in the chat box as well, we have the national conference coming up. So please, if you would like to attend, which I encourage all of us to attend, the European Climate Pact National Conference is happening in about 2 weeks, actually, the 19th of June. It's going down in Dublin. Okay, so if you follow that link, you will get all the information you need. We're going to be having a representative from the European Commission as well. We have a representative as well from Carlow County Council. A couple of other people too will be joining us from UCC. We would be having Dr. Lydia Komiski. So we have a lineup of awesome speakers. You do not want to miss this. So the floor is open. Do we have questions? I know we have about a minute to wrap up this webinar, but anyone has questions, please go ahead to ask. This is the time to. So please just go ahead and put it in the chat box to save time. We would not be allowing you to speak, I'm sorry, because of time. Just put it in the chat box. In the meantime, while we're waiting for any other person who has questions, I'll start with Ambassador Rhiannon.
Edima, I think there's a question over there.
There's a question? Okay.
Yeah, from Jim.
Okay.
You see the chat, there's and also from Patricia.
Okay, I'll take Jim's comment. I think it's more of a comment. Jim Doherty, thank you. Jim says, although an inland water incident rather than coastal, a small story in today's news perhaps provides another example of the importance of community engagement in protection and prevention, and shared the link. Thank you so much. I think I'm curious. After this, I'm going to actually check that out as well. And Patricia says, sounds so interesting, and adore Harper's Wetlands. Thank you for your comment. Now, Ambassador Rhiannon, you did talk about our culture, and this is me just wondering briefly, how does biodiversity link to our culture?
It links immensely through different place names and through the Irish language. And what we did, the physical description of the place, what was growing in the place, is used for the name. If that makes sense.
Okay.
Could I add to that? I just
go ahead.
Rhiannon, you're completely right, and I'm an Irish speaker. Irish was actually my first language, so I always think it's such a loss that we have these names translated into meaningless English things that don't have any meaning. The Irish names have loads of meaning, and actually a lot of them are related to the landscape, the geography, what's growing there, the biodiversity, what people are using the land for. And sometimes the answer as to all our problems is just by translating the actual name of the place. There are places called floodplain, and people wonder why they're flooding. So that kind of thing drives me a bit crazy. So there's a huge connection there that we're missing, and that's a big thing for me. Yeah, but thank you for bringing that up, and thank you for the person who likes Harper's Island. It is beautiful.
Thank you so much, Dr. Emma, for your comment. And Jim as well on the chat has sent an update to the previous link that he shared. Okay, so Clarence says, is the upcoming national conference free? Oh, of course, please. The conference is absolutely free and open. Just go to the link and register. Because we have limited space, only 40 people. I'm sorry, just 40 people. So that's why you have to just register, but it's totally free. If I could just steal 3 minutes more of your time. Dr. Breffní, how can we balance the immediate socio-economic needs of human populations with long-term goals for biodiversity conservation and ecosystem restoration? I can take it again. How can we balance the immediate socio-economic needs of human populations with long-term goals for biodiversity conservation and ecosystem restoration?
Yeah, I think some of these, for complex questions, there's usually a very simple answer. And I think sometimes when we think about what our, and again, it's not like sort of say, it's what our, those in power, okay? So those who hold, kind of titular power, but also real power in the societies we have. It's the decisions that are made there that need to change. So, for example, the spending on defense, for example, as opposed to wetland restoration, these type of budgets that where countries decide on what they want to spend their money on, does have an immediate impact on where, the ability of say humanity to respond to the biodiversity crisis. So if there was a kind of an immediate change in the way, kind of to look at the existential threats that we really face, not the ones that we imagine, I think we'd have a very different and very kind of a rapid response to the current climate crisis, but also the biodiversity crisis. So it's where we place the value. So if we can value, kind of place a value, identify a real value in terms of the landscape around us. And I think, again, this speaks to previous speakers about the indigenous understanding of the landscape and the Irish place names, the fact that they explained the area far better than the colonial English names that came after. So, and this applies across the world. So I think it's probably very badly answered your question, but it's a complicated question. But I think we have simple answers. But it's the decisions that we need, and we need them from those who are supposed to lead our countries.
I don't think it was badly answered, Dr. Breffní. Thank you very much. And finally, Dr. Emma, in the context of climate change, how can ecosystem restoration contribute to climate resilience? And if you could just tell us maybe like one specific restoration strategy that has proven most effective in mitigating the impacts of climate change.
Well, the first part of the question is how can this restoration contribute? Well, in my talk, I showed how one community had restored their area. And if this wasn't just one place, if this was done more broadly, this would have a kind of a ripple effect. So it has much more effect when there are more people doing it. So there's no point having one brilliant example of a restored community. That's not going to have a lasting impact on Ireland as a country or Europe or the world. So the idea is take good ideas and try to show other people why they work and how to do it. In terms of one strategy, I think I find it extremely difficult to pin it down to one strategy. But what I always think really, what I feel very strongly about is that biodiversity is something that is doing a job for us. It's doing it for free. If we actually stop destroying that thing, we won't have to spend millions and billions on engineering solutions for every problem that we create ourselves. So what I would ask people to reflect on is not to look at nature as something beautiful to walk around in and feel good about. It's something that's actively working for us and sustaining us. And we should restore it and look after it for that reason, and not because it looks beautiful. That's a bugbear of mine. It's the fact that it looks beautiful is a side effect, and in some ways it's unfortunate because it means that we view it in a very superficial way. So let's try and see nature as being something active that's actually keeping us alive. And if more people understood that, we might have more success in restoring it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Emma. And I like Dr. Breffní's comments. Please go on the chat if you're not looking at it already. He said Brian Frill's play Translations very much addresses this theme of naming and the landscape, and is a great drama too. Okay, I should try and see it too as well. All right, so we're wrapping up right now. Please, next slide. So we've talked about all of this. We've talked about biodiversity. Like DV had earlier mentioned, there is a photo competition going on. So please go ahead, and you don't have to be an awesome photographer, okay? If you have a camera just with your phone, you could just take a picture, something that you're doing that showcases climate action. And I mean, they're winners. You never can tell. You could be the one who would get invited to Brussels, all expense paid, yes. And also lots of other things to be won. You're going to get your e-certificate. You're going to be internationally put out. I think that's really huge. And aside that, what else can you do? You can host a group activity. You can take individual action. You can engage with local authorities, and you can spread the word. Final slide, please. So we have a next launch talk coming up. And again, I have to apologize for the technical hitches we experienced today. Really sorry about that. Our team is going to get on that as soon as possible. So the next launch talk, we're going to communicate the date, same time, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. And this time around, we'll be talking about green mobility and transport strategies within decarbonization zones, okay? And I already mentioned the national conference coming up. Please go ahead and register. We would love to have you. And of course, the photo competition. Someone's asking, is this webinar offering free e-certificates?
We will let you know later, because you need to consult also with Blaster. But this is not impossible. We might provide this is a good idea actually.
Yes, it
Besides
is.
of course, the speaker will get the e-certificate, but for the participant, may be also important for them.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us up until the end of this. Thank you to all our great, awesome speakers. Thank you so much. So we will make the slides available, and this will also be uploaded on YouTube. So anyone can go back and watch on YouTube. And we hope to see you in the next launch talk. But thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.